Welcome to the Stoic Golden Tribe, where enduring wisdom meets the strength of presence, and where we uncover the truths modern society refuses to teach men. Have you ever stood in the ruins of a relationship, wondering if love was ever real in the first place? Have you ever questioned why the pain was so deep, and yet somehow something in you changed after it? It's in those moments when your heart has been shattered and your soul feels raw, that a deeper kind of man is born. And it's often after those dark seasons that something rare shows up, not just comfort, not distraction, but real love. A love that doesn't demand your identity but respects it. A love that sees your strength, not your submission. In this video, we'll explore why real love often waits on the other side of heartbreak. We'll break this down into 4 powerful chapters. 1. The pain was the teacher. How suffering shapes the soul. 2. The love that broke you wasn't love, it was the lesson. 3. Why real love respects a man who's walked through fire. 4. How to recognize real love so you never settle again. We'll draw from historical love stories, ancient wisdom, biblical truth, and the kind of emotional intelligence that modern men need more than ever. Like this video, share it with a man who's still healing, subscribe if you want real strength, not shallow advice, and drop a comment below. Has pain ever introduced you to a deeper version of yourself? Let's begin. Chapter 1. The pain was the teacher. How suffering shapes the soul. There's a version of you that only heartbreak can awaken. Not the heartbreak that leaves you bitter, but the kind that forces you to rebuild from nothing. The kind that introduces you to the silence you never knew you needed. That kind of pain becomes your teacher. It doesn't just hurt, it transforms. Throughout history, some of the strongest men we remember were shaped not by victory, but by loss. Take Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, known not just for his rule, but for his reflection. He lost children. He watched his empire suffer plague and betrayal, and yet out of his pain came the writings of Meditations, a book that still shapes men thousands of years later. Why? Because pain taught him. And instead of collapsing, he sat with it. He listened. He learned. You see, there's a kind of man who rushes out of pain, chasing comfort, validation, or another woman to numb what he refuses to face. But there's another kind of man, the rare one, who goes inward, who allows the loss to refine him, who sits in the fire until the parts of him that don't serve him are burned away. That's the man real love finds, because real love doesn't come to complete a broken man, it comes to recognize a whole one. Pain has a strange way of clearing the fog. After the woman you thought you'd build a future with walks away, or after the promises she made are shattered by her own actions, you begin to see clearly. Not just her, but yourself. The illusions you held, the weaknesses you ignored, the red flags you justified. Pain reveals them all. It's humbling, but it's also sacred. There's a story from the ancient East of a samurai named Kusunoki Masashige. After being betrayed by the emperor he loyally served, Kusunoki didn't rage. He didn't seek revenge. Instead, he returned to the forest, meditated, trained, and rebuilt himself silently. Years later, he would ride back into battle, not just with strength, but with clarity. His final act, a strategic sacrifice, made him a symbol of unwavering honor in Japanese history. He wasn't the same man after the betrayal. The pain had shaped him. It stripped away naivete, but not hope. It deepened him. And that's exactly what it can do for you. Here's the truth most men avoid. The woman who broke your heart did you a favor. Not because she was right for you, but because she exposed the places in you that were still unguarded, still undefined, still too soft in the wrong places. She didn't ruin you. She revealed you. And that revelation is your invitation to upgrade. To become a man who no longer seeks validation, but who radiates value. A man who doesn't beg for love, but who attracts it by the sheer presence of who he has become. A man who's not afraid to be alone because he's no longer afraid to face himself. The pain was the teacher, the loss was the curriculum, the silence was the classroom. Most men run from that school, they drop out, they self-medicate, they rush into shallow connections hoping for a quick fix. But real men, resilient men, they stay, they graduate. And when they do, they carry a weight of wisdom that changes every room they enter. They're no longer chasing love because they've become love. They've become the man worthy of the very thing they once thought they lost. And here's where it gets powerful. Real love often waits until you become that man. Because that kind of love doesn't want your weakness. It wants your presence. It wants your boundaries. It wants the man who's been through fire but came out sharpened. You're not broken because she left. You're being rebuilt. Every heartbreak is a hammer, and if you let it, it will shape you into the kind of man that the right woman cannot ignore. Not because you pretend to be someone, but because you finally become someone. Someone whole, someone wise, someone grounded, and that man will attract a love that no longer drains but builds. A love that doesn't confuse intensity with intimacy. A love that sees your stillness and calls it strength, not distance. A love that respects your leadership, not because it's loud, but because it's rooted in something deeper than emotion. It's rooted in truth. Pain is not the end, it's the forge, and what it produces in you is rare, valuable, and impossible to counterfeit. Don't run from it. Let it do its work. Because real love, the kind that stands beside you when storms hit, the kind that doesn't fear your purpose, the kind that respects your mission, that love shows up after the pain, not before, because it waits for the version of you that pain is building. Let that version rise. Drop a comment below. I attract, not chase. Chapter 2. The love that broke you wasn't love, it was the lesson. There comes a moment after the pain when you finally see it for what it was. Not love, not destiny, not your forever, but the test. And if you're honest, it wasn't the love that broke you. It was the illusion of love. The fantasy you built around someone who was never ready to hold what you had to give. You called it love. But it wasn't built on truth, it was built on hope. You were in love with who you thought she could be, not who she really was. And that lesson, it hurt, but it was sacred. There's a story from the life of King David, long before he ruled, when he was still just a young man with an anointing and no crown. He fell in love with Michal, the daughter of Saul. She loved him too at first. But when David danced before the Lord in joy, celebrating the return of the ark, Michal looked down on him with disgust. Her heart had grown cold. She didn't understand his mission, his spirit, or his calling. And in that moment, David realized something painful. The woman who once loved him could no longer walk with him. Sometimes the person who was perfect for one season of your life becomes the weight in the next, and you have to let go. Not because you stopped loving, but because you started seeing. Real love doesn't mock your purpose. It doesn't punish your masculinity. It doesn't demand you shrink to make her feel secure. It doesn't manipulate. It doesn't confuse chaos for chemistry. But the counterfeit version of love, that's exactly what it does. It pulls you in with the thrill. It flatters your ego. It feels like passion, but ends in confusion. It tells you this is love, while slowly robbing you of your peace, your clarity, and your direction. The truth is, most men learn about real love only after they've tasted its imitation. And that's why the heartbreak is the initiation. You have to feel the weight of loving the wrong one to understand the value of the right one. You have to see how you bent, how you compromised, how you abandoned your center just to keep something that wasn't even real. And that memory becomes a compass. The next time someone enters your life, you remember what not to allow. You recognize the difference between emotional thrill and spiritual alignment. You don't just ask, is she beautiful? You ask, can she build with me? Can she follow when I lead? Can she respect who I am without trying to remake me into something soft and safe? That kind of discernment is born in pain. There's a line from the poet Khalil Gibran. Your pain is the breaking of the shell that encloses your understanding. That broken shell is your freedom. Because once it breaks, you stop chasing. You stop tolerating halfway love. You stop romanticizing toxicity and calling it devotion. You stop mistaking attachment for affection. You begin to realize the love that left was never your foundation. It was your revelation. And that revelation awakens your standard. Do you know what makes a man dangerous in the best way? It's when he no longer needs love to feel like a man. It's when he can be alone, strong, and centered. When he's no longer seduced by charm, but attracted to character. When he refuses to be loved for what he provides, but insists on being loved for who he is. That kind of man doesn't get trapped in cycles of dysfunction. He breaks them. And when the right woman comes along, she sees the difference, because she's not meeting a man who needs her to fix his wounds. She's meeting a man who healed without her, who didn't wait for someone to rescue him, but became the kind of man who could rescue others. And that's the man who attracts real love, a love that honors him, a love that respects his silence, a love that doesn't compete with his purpose, but complements it. A love that sees his scars, not as weaknesses, but as evidence of his wisdom. Remember this, the woman who broke you wasn't the villain, and you weren't the fool. You were the student. She was the curriculum, and what you learned from her becomes the filter for everything you allow moving forward. You may have loved her with everything in you, but it wasn't love if it cost you your identity. It wasn't love if you had to beg for peace. It wasn't love if you lost yourself to keep her. Real love feels like clarity. It feels like safety, not fear. It feels like alignment, not anxiety. It feels like purpose, not performance. But you only recognize it after the lesson. So don't regret the one who walked away. Honor the pain, learn the truth, and become the man who will never again settle for anything less than real. Because real love isn't fragile, it doesn't punish your strength, it doesn't require that you dim your light. Real love waits for the man who knows who he is, and if you're willing to walk through the pain, you'll become that man. Drop a comment below. The lesson became my standard. Chapter 3. Why real love respects a man who's walked through fire. There's a reason real love shows up after the storm, not during it. It's not because love avoids broken men, it's because real love waits for men who have been refined. A man who has walked through fire is no longer ordinary, he's different. His presence carries weight, his silence speaks, his confidence isn't loud, it's rooted, and that's the kind of man real love honors. You see, there's a false image in today's world that men must always have it all together to be loved, that vulnerability is weakness, that silence is disconnection, that strength is arrogance. But in reality, strength is forged in pain. And the man who has endured real heartbreak, loss, betrayal, and still chooses to be whole, that man is a rare force. Think of Nelson Mandela, a man who was imprisoned for 27 years, cut off from everything, stripped of freedom, mocked, hated, forgotten by many. But when he emerged from that darkness, he didn't return with bitterness. He didn't seek revenge. He walked with vision, with forgiveness, with power. And the world couldn't ignore it. His suffering didn't destroy him, it deepened him. That's what real love recognizes, not just your success, but your scars, not just what you offer, but what you've overcome. Because the man who's been through fire is not desperate. He's discerning. He doesn't chase attention because he knows the cost of giving it to the wrong person. He doesn't get shaken by silence because he's made peace with his own. He doesn't need to prove anything because he's already proven something to himself. Real love respects that. Because that kind of man doesn't just bring emotion to the table. He brings structure. He brings clarity. He brings a presence that steadies the room. And for the right woman, that presence is not intimidating. It's magnetic. Here's what most men don't realize. The pain you survived was shaping the quality of love you're about to attract. Every heartbreak that taught you how to guard your peace. every rejection that reminded you of your worth, every betrayal that showed you who not to trust. These became filters. And now you don't just want love, you want peace, you want alignment, you want respect. You want a woman who sees the man behind the pain, not one who tries to fix you, but one who honors what the pain already fixed. The man who has walked through fire is no longer at the mercy of feelings. He lives by principle, by discernment, by truth. And real love flows toward truth. There's an ancient proverb that says, "The crucible is for silver, and the furnace is for gold, but the Lord tests the hearts of men." That testing is sacred, because once your heart has been tested, it becomes strong enough to love, not from a place of fear, but from a place of choice. And love that's chosen is powerful. It's not reactive. It's not manipulative. It's not performative. It's steady. It's consistent. It's protective. And that's the kind of love you were built for, not the kind that pulls you into confusion, but the kind that calls you into leadership. Not the kind that drains you, but the kind that sharpens you. But you can't carry that kind of love if you're still chasing the validation of people who couldn't see your value in the first place. The fire was necessary. It burned off your ego. It exposed your insecurities. It tested your ability to stand alone. And the man who can stand alone is the man who can finally stand with someone without losing himself. You've seen it happen. Men who enter relationships and disappear. Their mission fades, their values blur, their direction becomes her desire, and soon they're no longer leading, they're surviving. But not you, because the fire taught you, the fire rebuilt you. You no longer sacrifice your identity for intimacy. You no longer betray your values for chemistry. You no longer surrender your power for peace. You walk as a man who has already suffered and already survived. And that's exactly why real love sees you now. Because real love doesn't want a man who's never been hurt. It wants a man who's been hurt and still chose to heal. Who didn't become bitter, but better. Who didn't close off, but leveled up. Who didn't seek revenge, but rose with vision. There's a difference between a man who's never been burned and a man who's walked through fire and came out forged. One is soft because he's untouched. The other is solid because he's been tested. And it's the solid man, the grounded man, the healed man, who draws in the kind of love that cannot be shaken. So don't regret your pain. Don't hide your scars. Don't shrink from your past. Wear it with honor. Let it speak for you, because the fire didn't ruin you, it refined you. And the right woman, the one worth waiting for, she doesn't want the version of you who's never been tested. She wants the version who survived it and never lost his soul. Drop a comment below. I've been through the fire and I walk with power. Chapter 4. How to recognize real love. So you never settle again. So you've walked through pain, you've rebuilt from betrayal, you've learned to sit in silence and find strength where others found sorrow. But now, what comes next? The greatest danger after healing is settling. Not because you're weak, but because you're tired. Tired of waiting, tired of hoping, tired of the silence. And in that fatigue, you may be tempted to accept something less, just to feel something more. But hear this clearly. The cost of settling is far greater than the cost of being alone. The wrong relationship will steal years. The wrong woman will confuse you, distract you, even destroy the parts of you that took years to rebuild. That's why recognizing real love isn't just emotional intelligence, it's survival. So how do you recognize it? First, real love brings clarity, not confusion. You don't wonder where you stand. You don't have to overanalyze messages. You're not pulled into emotional games where one day you're worshipped and the next day ignored. Real love brings peace to your mind, not war to your spirit. There's a story of C.S. Lewis, one of the greatest thinkers of the 20th century. He lived most of his life as a bachelor, focused on his writing and spiritual growth. And then, unexpectedly, he fell in love with Joy Davidman, a brilliant poet, a woman of fire and intellect. When they finally came together, it wasn't because he was chasing love, it was because he had become whole. And the love that met him there wasn't fragile, it was rooted in friendship, honesty, mutual strength. Even as Joy battled cancer, their connection deepened. C.S. Lewis later said, "She was my reward." That's what real love does. It feels like a reward, not a war. Second, real love doesn't demand you become smaller. It doesn't punish your masculinity. It doesn't fear your strength. It doesn't try to tame your mission or guilt trip you into compromise. A woman who truly loves you will stand beside your purpose, not in front of it. She won't need you to explain your every move. She'll sense your direction and align herself with it. That kind of woman doesn't compete. She complements. And when you feel that, you'll know, because real love will make you sharper, more focused, more alive. It doesn't dilute your drive, it deepens it. Third, real love holds standards. It's not afraid of truth. It's not just soft, it's structured. You won't be allowed to slack on your integrity. You won't be celebrated for being passive. Real love calls you up without shaming you. It respects you enough to challenge you, to hold the line when you're tempted to drift, to remind you of who you are when the world tries to make you forget. A woman who gives you real love won't feed your ego. She'll honor your essence. And here's the final key. Real love doesn't just feel good, builds good. If you want to know if it's real, look at the fruit. Has your peace grown since she entered your life? Has your discipline improved? Has your prayer deepened? Has your vision become sharper? Has your inner world become more stable? Because real love multiplies. It builds legacy, not just chemistry. It inspires courage, not just comfort. It opens doors inside your soul that you didn't even know were locked. That's what makes it worth the wait. But make no mistake, this kind of love is rare, not because it doesn't exist, but because most people aren't willing to become who they need to be in order to receive it. The man who attracts this kind of love has already become complete. He's not searching for someone to save him. He's not desperate to fill a void. He's not performing for approval. He has faced himself, mastered his mind, made peace with his past, and in that strength he attracts a woman who has done the same. A queen doesn't want a project. She wants a king, and a king doesn't just hand out his heart to anyone. He waits for the one who recognizes its value. That's why you had to go through the pain, not to be punished, but to be prepared. Prepared to know the difference between attention and affection, between being wanted and being honored, between someone who desires you for what you do and someone who loves you for who you are. So stand in that strength now. Don't settle for half love. Don't fall back into old patterns. Don't betray your progress just because you're lonely tonight. Remember what it cost you to become this version of yourself, because the woman who's meant for you will never ask you to shrink, to bend, or to perform. She'll see you, she'll respect you, she'll add to you. And when she arrives, you won't feel like you're starting over. You'll feel like you've come home. Drop a comment below. I wait for love that builds me. Now you understand why real love doesn't come easy, why it doesn't show up when you're desperate, but waits until you're disciplined, why it doesn't meet you in your chaos, but after you've rebuilt from it. Because the truth is this, you don't attract real love by chasing it. You attract it by becoming it. When you've walked through pain with purpose, when you've faced the mirror and refused to flinch, when you've rebuilt your soul in silence while the world kept moving. That's when love, real love, can finally recognize you. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not forgotten. You are in the process of becoming the kind of man who cannot be shaken. And the kind of love that honors that man is worth every moment of the wait. So protect your peace, sharpen your vision, lead your life with wisdom and power, because the right love isn't a distraction. It's a confirmation, not a storm, but a shelter, not a test, but a reward. Welcome to the Stoic Golden Tribe, where enduring wisdom meets the strength of presence, and where we uncover the truths modern society refuses to teach men. If this message spoke to you like this video, share it with a man who needs it, and subscribe for more wisdom that empowers your journey. And drop a comment below. What pain shaped the man you are today? This isn't just content, this is the call to rise, and you were built for it.